All right. Quickly coming into the bad attitude of the week nominee. He is, of course, Bill O'Reilly. Because you know what better advice could you possibly get about the military ethics, morals, courage, and things like that than to turn to, Bill O'Reilly? Why not? You got it. Absolutely. So Bill O'Reilly's going to begin our war coverage tonight because he offered more misguided and immoral thinking. Chris Minahan's got this, and I don't know if you got to see this, but yeah, it's rather insulting and disgusting. Here we go. This is it. It's classic, because he says, we had enough with Japan. The classic, you were part of that era, and everybody was just one giant gestalt back then, too. It's the collectivist we. We had enough with Japan. We had enough with Germany. We took care of that, dropping atomic bombs. This comes literally after the anniversary, just days after the anniversaries of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And he's saying that. That's Bill O'Reilly. Methinks perhaps he should shut his trap. Listen to this. It's incredible.
At this juncture in history, if I were the president of the United States, tomorrow I'd take out Pickaxe Mountain, just as we did a year ago with the other nuclear facility. I'd obliterate it, okay? That'd be number one. And then number two, I would tell...
So I think we know how to stop there because there's no way they can obliterate it unless they use a nuclear weapon. I think he probably is aware of that.
The Iranians living in Tehran, the capital city, get out because we're going to wreck your infrastructure. That means water.
That means war crimes. And yeah, so that's Bill O'Reilly. Charming. Anybody bought any Bill O'Reilly books? I haven't.
That means power. Now, the world would go crazy. You know what would happen. Democratic Party would jump up and down here. Trump would be almost alone. But that is the way to do it. He's got to make very difficult decisions. He didn't want to kill thousands of civilians. He told me that directly.
What kind of perverse world is this where you can have a disgraced former Fox News host who still has an audience up there promoting the idea to a News Nation host who sits there and lets him talk? I don't know how the News Nation host responded. He might have responded in a way that was in favor of, morality and ethics. I don't know, right? He allowed him to talk. I haven't seen the response. But how do you get this guy crawling out from the cobwebs and saying this nonsense, which is so clearly in favor of war crimes? It's just stunning. Where do people get the idea that it's okay to attack civilians? And then again, just days after the anniversary of Hiroshima and the anniversary of Nagasaki, talking about how we had enough with Japan. Like it was like Japan was just some petulant child. So we slapped them around and it was nothing. Meanwhile, people's friggin' shadows were etched into stone. What kind of perverse world are we in? That's the way to start. Now let's go to another character. I've met this guy, and as I've noted in the news notes, Wayne Allen Root. You're probably familiar with this dude, and if you react the way I think you might react to him, believe me, it's even worse if you meet him in person, okay? Yes, you will be counting your fingers after you shake his hand, and you're probably wise not to shake his hand. Watch as Wayne Allen Root simply nods and laps up the nonsense from his great exclusive interview with Donald Trump. Trump depleted these arms that he's discussing faster than Joe Biden, obviously, and can't restore the munitions for many, many months, if not years, obviously. Trump also is depleting the fuel reserves of the United States and, of course, blocking foreign fuel like Russian fuel and spiking up fuel and gas prices and making anything that is shipped or depends on shipping become more expensive because he's a lockdown master. He was in his first administration and he is now. So Breaking 911 has Wayne Allen Root, who evidently wants to look like a facsimile of Donald Trump. He's like a Donald Trump doll. I don't know what the deal is. He's like a Donald Trump plushie, It's like a bobblehead Trump. Now, just to let you know, I met him when he was trying to run in the Libertarian Party for a presidential race. And he came to New Hampshire to be engaged in some sort of a debate or something. And I had to be the moderator. And it was like a used car salesman on speed. It was just so offensive. Like virtually and I have, I don't usually get a really bad, like, don't trust this guy vibe off of people. But this guy, yes, I got that vibe. So here he is talking with Trump.
By the way, they talk about munitions, and we're fine with munitions. We're having to do with, we're fine. But the reason it would be lower, and we're building them like crazy, but the reason it's low is because he gave $300 billion worth to Ukraine. He gave more. He gave, right. They never mentioned that.
Did anybody mention that Donald Trump not only broke the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, he broke it by giving Ukraine intermediate nuclear capacity missiles? Did anybody, did Wayne Allen Root remember this?
They never like to mention that. Now, I give to Ukraine also, but they have to pay, meaning the European Union. I don't do Ukraine. I give it to the European Union. They have money, and they pay.
No, he doesn't. What he does is he gives them to NATO, and the United States pays 66 to 70% of NATO's budget. So he's lying. We've discussed it. I've mentioned it once already this week. I mentioned it once last week. You can look it up. Wayne Allen Root evidently doesn't like to look stuff up. He likes to look up what Donald Trump's going to be wearing today and try to mimic it.
Top dollar. They pay full dollar. I don't want to say top because, I'm not looking to pay top.
No, of course not. You just want your arms friends to make a lot of money so that people who are on the board of BAE Systems like Kelly Ayotte can, make a ton of money. By the way, there's a great report. We'll talk about it tomorrow, exposing the corporations that are making tons of money in owning the warehouses that ICE is buying. Guess what? They're connected with banks like Goldman Sachs and others. I know, shocker, right? And of course, in the news notes, Trump continues to spread the lie that for 47, but however, he's upped it to 50 years now, Iran has been the belligerent against the United States when it was the other way around, going back to 1953 when the U.S. overturned and elected leadership of Iran. So here we go. Yes, it's awesome. Yep, here it is. Trump just flipped Iran's reparations demand back on Tehran. As you probably saw this morning, Trump said, well, if they're going to do that, then we're going to demand damages too. That would be damages for Donald Trump sending out troops who willingly took unconstitutional orders and used the tax money that turned the money into arms and ships to go there when they shouldn't have gone there. So here is Trump making his demand
for reparations. The commander-in-chief is looking to make Tehran pay for the Americans killed or seriously wounded in Iranian attacks. Chief Forward Correspondent Trey Yanks is live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey, Brian, good morning. Late Monday, President Trump responded to Iranian demands for compensation in order to reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
They asked for money for the damage that we've done. I said, that's a good idea. Well, we're going to ask for money for the damage they've done over a 50-year period, many thousands of people, and maybe damages for the 52,000 protesters over the last 4 months that were killed. And
it's unbelievable. No compunction whatsoever. Maybe he's having dinner tonight with Bill O'Reilly. Maybe they'll have some great Irish stew, some stone soup. I don't know what it'll be. It's like a totally different world. It's just like a parallel universe where they make up stuff. 52,000 now. A few weeks ago, it was 40,000. Then it was 50,000. Now it's 52,000. And he's saying, well, over the weeks. We don't even know how many people were killed when the United States tried to overthrow the government of Iran in January. And they sent CIA and Mossad-backed people who had links to Starlink, and some were Kurdish and came in from Iraq and Turkey and said, hey, let's try to overthrow the government. And they weren't successful. Many of the deaths were Iranian police officers killed by the American-backed insurgent forces, but don't say anything. Shh, quiet. Well, Daniel Davis and Douglas McGregor has some thoughts on this Trump idiocy.
This part here because wow, I mean, if you've been watching this war since last February, people may be a little surprised to find out that we are in firm control of this, but that's what the president of the United States had to say this morning.
The only one that has control of the Strait of Hormuz right now is the United States Navy. We have a blockade that's been infallible. It's a steel wall, and we let people in that we want to let in, and those people come in, and they've been coming in and they're going out. So it's actually open now. We do not let them go into Iran.
So, okay, if we have a blockade, it is effective. It's not foolproof, but it is effective at largely stopping Iranian transports out or stuff into Iran. That part is true. But I mean, to say that we're in control of it and that we decide what comes in and what goes out and that it's open, I mean, how do you get by with that now in nearly the 6 month of war?
Well, I think we have to say that the traffic is down by a factor of 90% from what it was before the war. Any way you calculate it, that's nothing short of a disaster for the global economy. So if his, principal aim is to somehow or another harm or sabotage or subvert the global economy, I think that's working very well. As far as influencing Iran, there's no evidence that anything we're doing is influencing Iran at this point.
And the question is that going to change? I mean, what is happening right now? Because actually, I got one more here from President Trump. I said this morning, it was yesterday. But he's saying, listen, we're kind of taking a low-key approach to this, and we're semi-negotiating.
They asked for reparations, you might say, or they asked for money for the damage that we've done. I said, that's a good idea. Well, we're going to ask for money for the damage they've done over a 50-year period.
The president's new strategy is to inflict maximum economic pain on the country. The Treasury is tightening its grip with more sanctions on the regime.
We are low-keying it militarily, adding, we are only semi-negotiating with them. We're just watching Iran with its huge inflation and the fact they have no money.
Now, again, the blockade is having a negative effect on Iran, and it is causing inflation and several other things. But is that going to be enough to cause them to have economic hardship before our economic hardship hits harder?
I think that's the right question, and I think the answer is no. It's going to hit us very hard in the fall, as we've talked about. All the effects of the downturn in traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, the fact that 40% of the world's sulfur comes out of the strait and none of it's coming out, all these kinds of things. And I think that Donald Trump should consider writing a new book. I think his last book was The Art of the Deal. He's an expert now. He should sit down and write a book called The Art of Defeat.
And I want to show these comments over on the screen. Great comments. Mark Young is there. He says, Trump, a psychopathic podium pig, just as the Pope was during the Dark Ages. The papacy murdered millions. Trump murders millions. Why does anyone call him president? And do not obey 4 scores in a lifetime of wars. What is government good for? Absolutely nothing. MOE is in the house as well. Great comments. There's so many. I could just go on and on and on. We'll pop back over to Rumble and drop your comments there. If you want things seen, also head on over to X. You can get those seen on the screen. I want to show you the stark difference between Trump and the Iranian foreign minister. But I also want to mention that what Doug McGregor was talking about regarding the economic situation and Donald Trump claiming that they're going to put sanctions on Iran, continue the sanctions on Iran, I should say, and somehow that's going to lead to some change. They already tried that. Bessent tried that with his economic warfare in January and didn't work. And I'm going to take a look. I've got a special report inside the news notes triggered off of what Donald Trump had to say about the sanctions that have been pitted against Venezuela and Cuba, going back 40 years for Venezuela and going back to the 1960s, 1960, I think exactly, for Cuba. So that's a special report that actually is at the bottom of the news notes tonight. And I'm going to give that to you as a way to sort of lets you see just how dangerous the United States is, and especially how it brings it forward. All these decades of sanctions brings it forward to show us how difficult it is when you've got a country like the United States, this imperialist nation, which is starving the local people, stopping technology from being traded through free market trades. And then you get something like an earthquake in Venezuela. That ties into, of course, Donald Trump's errant and fatuous claims that they're making tons of money off of Venezuelan oil. They can't get that oil. You can't get ye flask, as they would say in Homestar Runner. They can't get it because they don't have the technology, and now they don't even have the technology to clean up after the earthquake. So we'll tell you about the sanctions, because that particular term is going to ring a bell later in the program. Plus, I want to show you how the foreign minister Arachki is straight and honest. Here's Ryan Rosbiani. What a stark difference. And again, some great stuff here to show you the stark difference as we talk to Judge Napolitano and Karen Kwiatkowski, and they see the difference. But here's the Iranian foreign minister. Of course, this is not in English, but he says that same enemy, this is Abbas Arachki, that same enemy who on the first day of the war tweeted unconditional surrender. 20 days later, that same enemy begged us for negotiations. Arachki said he has personally heard officials tell him Iran, quote, won the war and won the diplomacy, and credited the outcome to the sacrifice of the Iranian people, including medical staff on the front lines. So very good. He says, in my view, we won with honor. We won with dignity. I'd say, you know, on the status level, if you want to say that. Yep. Everyone knows and has witnessed it. Yep, I agree. And of course, I'm abbreviating that just a little bit because I want to turn to the judge and Karen Kwiatkowski. Of course, she's on Tuesdays at 3 o'clock with the judge, and just as phenomenal. She works with the Mises Institute. Remember last week, we got to show them both discussing the nature of the state, which is illegitimate from the start. You know, both really good exponents and proponents of individual liberty philosophy. And so let me show you this, because this is right where they jump into this stark difference between Arachki from Iran and this despicable president.
Chris, first number 14 followed by number 1.
And well, our brave armed forces, who truly sacrificed everything they had, managed to render the world's largest and most formidable army completely helpless and ultimately defeated it. And please understand, this is not just some empty slogan at all. It is a profound reality that the entire world is now openly admitting to and acknowledging with great respect. That in the recent war, it was the Islamic Republic of Iran that proved itself to the world. And it clearly showed us that it is truly a remarkably tough, resilient, and completely invincible power. I have heard this many times from foreign ministers of other countries, from officials of other countries, that you Iranians have created a wonder, the exact same phrase. You have astonished the whole world.
Well, it's open now. We're taking a lot of shit. It's open now. Look, the only one that has control of the Strait of Hormuz right now is the United States Navy. We have a blockade that's been infallible. It's a steel wall. And we let people in that we want to let in, and those people come in, and they've been coming in and they're going out. So it's actually open now. We do not let them go into Iran. They're not admitted into the strait to go to Iran.
Which is a closer approximation to the truth.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, as you listen to Foreign Minister Arachki go through the statements that he's making, they are confirmable in fact. And, you know, when he talks about what other countries say, we know that other countries say that because if you pay attention to the news, you can see that what he is saying is consistent with reality. And I think even the American military and many Americans are shocked, absolutely shocked that Iran has done so well. So it is astonishing. And, you know, the people who study these kinds of things will say, well, you know, 47 years of sanctions and all these things that were done forged in fire a nation's capability to defend itself and to assert itself in a way that we didn't see coming. So these things are documentable. They are confirmable. When Arachi speaks, of course, he's very serious and he's not using flowery language. Then you have Trump. Okay. And I can't stop laughing at Trump because he seems to have no self-awareness whatsoever. When he says that, a steel wall, our Navy blockade is a steel wall. Well, it's a pretty darn big one because we're like sitting 600 nautical miles offshore. We can't come any closer. That's a big steel wall. I don't think there's enough steel in America to make a wall that big. But anyway, he talks about ships going in and out and that that's basically open. Well, that's easy to confirm. I mean, Larry Johnson repeatedly shares the two websites that you can look at that track boats, ships, traffic around the world, and certainly track it going in and out of the Strait of Hormuz. So you can see in real time, and you can see historical, and you can watch it. So why lie about something that is so easy to verify? Arachi doesn't lie on principle. He's not lying on principle, and they did win that war. And so what he's saying is very positive for the Iranians. It's not so pleasant for the Americans, what he's saying. It is not fun to listen to the foreign minister describe how they have won, how they have prevailed, their resiliency, their courage, their toughness. Okay, that's not easy for us to hear, but it's verifiable. Trump, on the other hand, seems to be living in a world that is whatever reality that he woke up that morning with, is true. And he can't be fact checked, which is insane because, it's not insane. It's alarming, really, that our president is so out of touch with reality. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why does he lie so obviously? Why does Trump speak the way that he does so casually? Is it because he has no grasp of what has actually happened, I don't know, over the last 5 months, over the last 40 years? Does he not understand how we got here? He acts kind of, like he had nothing to do with it. He's just giving you a report. Yeah, the strait is open. What? You're anyway.
Yeah, and the nonchalance of it is definitely striking. And there's a great comment in there from Do Not Obey, a bunch of them, but one of them had Do Not Obey says, I get a kick out of it when people sort of mock the style of Trump. Look, I just roll up my sleeves and go to work. This joint is just like a casino. It's awesome. Sarcasm rocks. No, not really. No, doesn't really rock. Oh, and by the way, talking about not being able to handle reality, here's Tom Zion Cotton salivating for more future aggression and more death. Yes, and it's on his own X feed. So, who wouldn't want to subscribe to that, right? Oh, absolutely. He served it up just for you.
Well, Hugh, at this stage, we haven't had a major exchange of fire now in, I think, 9 or 10 days. The president said last week that there may be a deal underway. I frankly think there's never going to be a deal with these revolutionary fanatics. I wish we had simply finished the job.
They're revolutionary fanatics. The people who overturned the government that the United States changed in 1953. They're the revolutionary fanatics, however. Not the people who engaged in regime change. Those people thousands of miles away that the United States is attacking, they're the fanatics sitting there having picnics under a bridge when the United States goes and drops armaments on them. They're the fanatics. Hey, Tom, okay.
Job back in early April, before starting this on-again, off-again series of ceasefires. I don't think it's too late to finish the job. We need to destroy the remnants of their military, especially their military assets that are near the Strait of Hormuz that can continue to threaten shipping through the Strait of Hormuz.
It's like, again, even if one removes the immorality of it, just the tactical and logistical side of this stuff, it doesn't, like, if you when I was a kid, I would hang out with people who were into military games and, military history and stuff like that. And, some of these guys were really into this stuff, right? Like at 11 or 12 years old, you could see this and you'd say, yeah, my friend Dave, he went into the military. Like, Yeah, he could tell Tom Cotton, no, dude, you're completely blowing smoke. You don't know anything that you're talking about, and you're going to put American lives at risk. Shut up. And it's unconstitutional. I thought you were in the Senate.
If we did that, we'd be able to get more tankers out every single day. That would help get the price of gas and diesel under control for Arkansans and all Americans. It would also prevent Iran from using that point of leverage in the future. And then in the meantime,
it's so funny how they weren't using that point of leverage until you attacked them. Oh gosh, gee whiz. And guess what? It does look like the other Gulf states are close to agreeing to Iran running with subcontracting on the part of Oman, the Strait of Hormuz. So let's go to Mario Nawfal. His team is on top of this. And let me see. I've seen a bunch of these from Jamie. So this is the same writer. So they got this from a source, I don't know, Azar News. Reports indicate Gulf countries are willing to live with Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz if it leads to a broader agreement with Tehran. They appear ready to accept limited progress on Iran's missile capabilities and incomplete solutions for the proxy forces active throughout the region. Trump has already indicated openness to ending hostilities without a full nuclear pact, so long as commercial shipping can move freely once again. With 1/5 of the world's oil and 1/4 of its LNG flowing, not right now, through that narrow choke point, any arrangement that cements Iranian leverage there would reshape energy security and regional influence for years to come. What was the point of it all? Yeah. Hey, Tom, do you follow Mario Nawfal? And again, Mario Nawfal is not like super pro Iranian over American and other interests and that sort of thing. You know, he's often criticized for not giving enough leeway to the Iranians. But yeah, it does seem like that's where things are headed. While that's happening, check out what the Energy Secretary is doing. I know you might be saying he's lying. Yeah, if you said yes that he was lying, you'd be correct. Absolutely right. Here's Drop Site News. Energy Secretary Chris Wright, who's always wrong. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright claimed that military operations in cooperation with Gulf allies have pushed the 7-day average of oil leaving the Strait of Hormuz to nearly 9 million barrels per day. Wright said another 5 million to 7 million barrels per day is leaving through pipelines and export facilities, bringing total regional flows to nearly 15 million barrels per day. He claimed more than 20 million barrels left the region on Sunday alone, exceeding pre-war levels. His post did not identify the underlying data source. Independent tracking shows a sharply different picture. First, oil tanker analysts estimated implied Hormuz flows at 3.8 million barrels Monday, lowering the 7-day average to 5.1 million barrels per day. Kepler recorded approximately 16.2 million barrels moving west to east through Hormuz between August 4th and the 10th, averaging just over 2.3 million barrels per day, Chris. Brett Erickson told DropSite this morning that roughly 3.5 times as many vessels are leaving the Gulf as entering, meaning there may not be enough replacement tankers to sustain even current outbound volumes. He estimated the Omani route is carrying closer to 4 to 5 million barrels per day, not the nearly 9 million claimed by Wright. Yeah. So here's what Secretary Wright had to say, because evidently either he has an AI lying machine or he likes to lie to make everybody feel good. Now, why would he be doing that, though? Well, maybe it's because, of course, the economy is in the crapper. So let's go. We're going to skip over some of the Gaza stuff, some of the Ukraine, Russia stuff, and get into the economic situation. Oh, look, there's a chart. Whoa, what's this? Yes, just to reiterate, as we mentioned yesterday, a follow-up about the down. Yeah, that's right, doing the down low. Mario's team has got it. Mario C's going to keep it clean. The U.S. jobs market has been lying to your face statistically speaking. Jobs data has been revised down in 21 of the last 30 months, erasing 1.05 million jobs from the record. May revised to an increase of 63,000, but that doesn't include the number of people who are no longer looking for work. June revised to an increase of 20,000, again, combined with a negative 103,000 jobs. That's the biggest 2-month downward revision since July 2025. So they revised it down, and there you go. Every headline number you celebrated was probably too high. Oh, look, in the red. Sorry, you chose the wrong door. I'll choose curtain number 2. Oh, and look, the collapse of the yen. So this is what we discussed when we were looking at the billboard. Here it is. The collapse of the yen means sell-off of U.S. debt and a lack of buyers. So what they tried to do last week, as we know, was they were desperate to try to save the yen so that the people who owed stuff in yen wouldn't sell off their U.S. holdings, which would mean, you got it, that the United States would be in a lot of trouble because the U.S. bond price would then drop because people are trying to sell it off. And there's not enough demand for it. So it would sell at a lower price. And that would mean, you got it, the United States would have to purchase bonds and the Fed would have to purchase bonds at, you got it, new rates that would be higher for the new bonds, which means an increase in the debt spread for the United States on the repayment of its bonds. And Donald Trump doesn't want that. So they tried to sustain the yen last week to stop that recursive boomerang effect. And instead of using US dollars, which again would have caused a massive inflationary spiral and signaled to people that there's a problem, they sold off euros and they used those. But it was insufficient. I know, maybe you're shocked too. Maybe anybody who's been watching economics for a couple of years would say, there's more coming. And guess what? You got it. That's right. It's still coming. That's right. The collapse of the yen means sell-off of U.S. debt and a lack of buyers of new U.S. bonds, lacking all around the world now because so many are seeing their investment in Japanese bonds and yen deteriorate. This, coupled with the reality of U.S. debt, is driving up U.S. bond yields to near record highs. Whoops. So here's the macro paper. The 30-year bond, everybody, look at this rate. Yep, it just hit 5.28%, its highest level since the 2007 financial crisis. First Japan, and now the U.S. The bond markets of major economies are getting crushed. Wow, that's crazy. That is so bad. So again, that's going to be good for precious metals. That's for darn sure. Just long-term holdings of precious metals is key. Japan and France, obviously Japan in the picture, but France and the UK are also in the picture as they all saw their bond yields reach multi-decade highs. They have to promise higher rates. At the same time, inflation expectations are going up. That's why they have to offer higher rates, because people know when it gets paid back, the monetary units won't buy as much. Duh. At the same time, yep, you got it. That could force central banks to hike rates. Yes. That is why, again, in 2009, the Russians and the Chinese stopped buying long-term U.S. debt. And that was when the United States started to target Russia as an enemy because they were trying to protect the U.S. dollar. And they didn't like the fact that the Russians weren't buying anything past the 10-year bond. Wow, I know. You mean they don't want to buy something that 10 years from now will be paid back with worthless pieces of crap? I don't understand. You mean there's something else they could buy? Like, oh, I don't know, gold? What? No, that's crazy. Yeah. So there you go, everybody. Keep it in mind. Do with it what you will. I'm not a financial analyst, and I don't give financial advice. Oh, look, gas hits $4 a gallon as Trump says U.S. is only semi-negotiating with Iran. Yes, indeed. This is one of those, like they play music in the background sort of thing. So it doesn't matter whether the sound's on for this or not. So we'll just bring this down. Yeah. As the president eases off military strikes and threats, a blocked oil route is keeping, wait a minute, let me go back. A blocked oil road is keeping the American gas prices above $4 a gallon. Geez, that's awesome. A sudden shift in tone. Trump said the United States is prepared to hold off on new military action against Iran, an abrupt departure from his recent threats. We are low-keying it. Yes, that was a Sunday phone interview with Axios, not an arm of the Israeli government in any way. That's classic. So let me know over in your area what diesel and, 87, 89, whatever octane you might use. All right, let me know. I'd love to know about that. And also, just to let you know, Trump's tariff taxes. Two things on the tariffs. North Carolina, this is just from the Raleigh News and Observer, but of course there are, I believe, 16 states that are suing the federal government right now over Trump's new attempt to do the tariffs. So there you go. And you got it. This is a T-shirt manufacturer. They say for over a year, Burlington-based TS Designs has been swept up in a chaotic business environment caused by changing tariff prices. The T-shirt manufacturer lost customers, paid more for shipping, raised prices, and now is working to navigate the refund process. Yeah, good luck trying to recoup some money that the Supreme Court decided was charged illegally. But the policies are changing again. In late July, the United States Trade Representatives announced new tariffs or import taxes on 60 trading partners, affecting 99.4% of U.S. imports. Is this good? Is this good for you? Does anybody think this is good, or is this lockdown 3.0? Like, have you met anybody who says, oh, no, this is definitely healthy for the U.S. economy. I love it. This is great. Or are people waking up to at least the immediate fact that these tariffs are harming them if they haven't understood that tariffs are always poisonous and immoral? Are they at least recognizing, well, maybe these tariffs aren't doing good? No, yeah, maybe that's something we ought to learn. Maybe. And by the way, the Trump administration is, check this out, they're looking for something special to happen with the Jones Act. This is astounding. So they're increasing costs for everybody, and they still are not looking for a permanent end to an unconstitutional thing called the Jones Act, which we know mandates, and it goes back to the early 1900s, it mandates, not Davy Jones and not David Bowie, it mandates that any foreign shippers who bring supplies to willing participants in a free market at one dock cannot use the same ship to take further stuff to another dock. It has to be put under a U.S. flagged ship. And again, if people remember, one of the major problems that the American revolutionaries had with the Brits was just the kind of thing that the Brits were doing to American shipments that were coming over to England. They had friends who ran the ports in England, and they would demand massive port fees or demand that the materials be entirely offloaded from the American ships and loaded onto British ships, or that if they weren't going to be offloaded, that starting in America, the ships had to have a certain percentage of British sailors on them. It's no different. Hundreds of years have passed, and the same mendacious mentality fills the halls of politics. Trump extends Jones Act waiver with limits in bid to tamp down energy prices. Well, he could stop the sanctions and stop attacking people in Iran and then turn himself over to a war crimes committee. The Trump administration is once again waiving U.S. ship rules as part of an effort to keep gasoline and other fuel costs down, the White House said Monday. In particular, it issued another 90-day waiver of the Jones Act. You're not the only cuddly toy that was ever enjoyed by any boy. Written by Nilsson, by the way. A 100-year-old law that requires shipping between U.S. ports to be conducted by American ships. Can you imagine, like politicians sitting there? They come home at dinner. So what'd you do in Congress today, honey? Well, yeah, you know, we made dinner more expensive. What? It's all right because we can vote ourselves a pay increase. Oh, okay, that's cool. It's like they're just royal swabs. They're just so bad. The administration issued a waiver allowing foreign ships to move products between U.S. ports in March and announced an extension in April as the war in Iran drove up fuel and other prices. So here's a quick question, Donald. If the Jones Act is so great, why do you need to pass a waiver to stop the Jones Act? Maybe there's a lesson in economics and ethics here. Maybe if you're trying to make sure that things are less expensive for people, and to do that, you're putting up a waiver to, again, temporarily stop the Jones Act from punishing people if they want to move stuff from one port to another without having to move it onto a U.S. flag ship. Maybe the idea of moving it onto a U.S. flag ship is really stupid. I don't know. I had a couple milliseconds to think about it. And, I thought, I don't know. Theodoric of York. Perhaps there's a different way. Scientific method. Nah, fetch more leeches. Broomhilda. Theodoric of York, medieval barber. Don Pardo. Thank you, Don. Woo! Man, this is fun. I hope you're having a good time, everybody. Oh, and by the way, I mentioned how Abdul al-Sayed has this proposal as he's running for one of the 2 Michigan Senate seats. And he's got this proposal for Medicare for all. So again, and let me show you the news notes, right? So you got it right there. Abdul al-Sayed says people will pay a little bit more in taxes for universal health care. Welcome to Choiceville. It's good to be free, isn't it? It's all going to be done by the royal we. It's the collective, the gestalt. You're part of the blob. Steve McQueen can't stop you. Not a chance. So again, he's doing the right thing, opposing United States aggression against Iranians, but he favors United States aggression against taxpayers because he thinks that will lead to a positive, warm-hearted end. That's awesome, huh? Yeah.